they tried so hard, so very, very, very hard. I'm talking about the Democrats. They tried so hard to prevent two of Trump's cabinet nominees from getting confirmed. One being Senator Jeff Sessions, who was just confirmed not too long ago. I think like maybe an hour ago, not even an hour ago. And they tried so hard, and they tried with the racist terms. You know, he's racist, even though there's really no proof that he's racist, but he's racist. They tried that. Elizabeth Warren got up there, and she read a letter. And yes, you have to shake your fist. You have to shake your fist when you do an Elizabeth Warren impression. Oh, Coretta Scott King says, and then the senator, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, said, you can't just get up here and impugn the character, even if it's from another voice, even if you're reading it, you can't impugn the character of another senator like they did. And so they shut her up. And, of course, now it kind of backfired, and Elizabeth Warren is using that to her advantage. And she's probably going to run for president in 2020. So look forward to that. We just got rid of one, Hillary Clinton, and now we have Elizabeth Warren. By the way, another person that's being thrown out there today I saw. Let's see if you're all excited about this. See if you're excited about this, Tom Benson.
Thrown out there like to the wolves? Is that what you mean?
Well, thrown out there that he's going to run for president in 2020. That the Democrats got.
Okay.
Al Franken.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah, So that's, there you go. There you go. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are doing this show until 10 p.m. I'm on Facebook Live as well. You can just send me a friend request on Facebook. Search Michael Yaffee, send me a friend request. We're on the Beyond Reason Radio app, which you can download the Beyond Reason Radio app and listen to the show live or listen to the podcast of the show, whenever you want to, because it's the future. And you can listen to shows like this whenever you want to on that thing they call a smartphone, the computer in your hand, because it's the future. See, no excuse not to listen to the show. So you can download the Beyond Reason Radio app and the Google Play or Apple App Store. We're also, of course, on News Radio 102.5 WFLA live as well. If you have any comments, you can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680, or you can comment right there on Facebook Live. So, obviously, there's like a bajillion things going on today. But by far, the biggest controversy I've seen on social media by people I know on both sides of the aisle, on the news and everything, on opinion pieces, the biggest controversy is actually not Trump, believe it or not, right now, at least in the past week. It's not Trump's immigration ban, although it gets a lot of attention, or Trump saying that the media is not covering terrorist attacks, or it's not even Jeff Sessions, believe it or not. By far, what I've noticed from people that I talk to, and, a lot of fans of the show I'm on social media with, I go on Twitter a lot, I see other sides as well, is Betsy DeVos, the nominee who had just been confirmed, actually, for the Secretary of Education. Betsy DeVos, for some reason, that nomination and her and what she stands for and the whole idea of the future of education in this country has created more controversy, more debate than I necessarily would have predicted. I'm actually with all the other stuff going on, it seems like that is what really gets people riled up right now. That is the first priority to a lot of people. And by the way, there's a lot of Republicans I know, libertarians I know, who did not want her confirmed as well. So we have mostly all the Democrats, really, 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 really tried hard. That was one of their main battles, was to make sure she was not confirmed. But there was also a lot of Republicans as well. Not as many, but there was a couple that voted against her. But there were some moderates I've seen who did not like her. So I thought this would be a great topic to talk about then, because I kind of confused about it. I kind of don't understand and didn't understand all of the ardent opposition to her and her nomination. And basically, there's a couple of things I found from people, a couple of big complaints that I found from people in terms of her nomination. The biggest complaint, obviously by the Democrats, more than anything, is her stance on school choice. Well, let's not mince words here. That the Democrats especially, the teachers' unions especially, people in the public education system especially, who have worked in the education system, who get their livelihood off the education system, or who believe in public education, they could not stand the idea. They could not stand the idea of someone outside of that system being the head of the Department of Education. They couldn't stand it. So, and that brings me to the second biggest criticism I saw of her, which was that she is unqualified. That she is not qualified because she had never went to public school. She has never been a teacher or an administrator at a public school or anything. And that means she is not qualified to do this job. And when they were questioning her in the Senate confirmation hearings on things like progress versus proficiency that most people probably didn't know anything about either, she didn't necessarily know all the answers, and that meant she was unqualified. I want to address both of those things. I want to address both of those issues. Because the more I look into it, the more I think it's a really good thing that she was confirmed, believe it or not. Now, there were some things that she said that she probably could have answered a little bit better. You know, you have to be experienced when you're at these Senate confirmation hearings. I think some of these people get taken off guard exactly how they work, you know, all the showboating and everything. But you have to be experienced. That being said, I think the best example I can go with this is I talked to a friend of mine who was against it. I talked to her on social media. I won't say her name or anything. But she was very, very against DeVos being nominated. So I asked her, I said, what exactly are you so afraid of that she is going to do as the Secretary of Education? What are you so afraid is going to happen if she gets confirmed? Because I hadn't heard a lot of that. Really, I heard all these criticisms of her personally and her experience, and she's pro-school choice, but I didn't hear exactly what they thought she was going to do that made them so afraid. So I asked her, and she answered me. And she brought up basically the two same points that I just brought up. One, she had never been in public school. She had never been a teacher administrator. She doesn't know all the ins and outs of public schools, so that makes her unqualified. I'll address that in a second. But the other thing she said, which kind of was interesting to me, is she said, well, she is for defunding public schools, that we shouldn't defund public schools. And she admitted to me that she lives in an area where there isn't a lot of charter schools or private schools. It's more of a rural area, and that the idea of school choice and defunding a public school would not be good for that area. But was also very interesting to me, though, what she said, that I didn't really get to address with her, but she was talking about her local public school. And she was talking about how the teachers are not as good, how they don't have the best equipment, they don't have the best textbooks, and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, and I said, so you're basically admitting that your public school is inefficient. You're basically admitting that in your area, the public school is failing, that you are forced to go to a failing public school. So if that's the case, wouldn't you like a system put in place that actually gives you the choice to be able to go to a different school, to have that option to be able to go and choose to a different school so you don't have to continue going to that failing school? Now, her point was, well, there are not really a lot around. But if we start moving in this direction, I would think, or more school choice, I think there would eventually be more options around. And wouldn't you want more options around, even if you're admitting to me? Because you're admitting to me, and a lot of people will admit to me, that the public schools they go to are failing. But they think that the problem is money, that the problem is funding, that they need to promote more funding into public education, and that'll fix a lot of it. And yet the stats show that that's not working. So you have the two issues here. You have school funding, and you have school choice, and then you have her qualifications. The first issue, now I want to get into her qualification whole argument, because that even Republicans say, oh, well, she's completely unqualified. She shouldn't be Secretary of Education because she is unqualified. Well, I found a really good opinion piece of Fox News that actually addressed this, I think, really well. Is by Michael Petrilli. And he talks about this and about this issue. And I thought he addressed it really well. And I thought it made a lot of sense in terms of that argument that, well, she is just completely unqualified. So, and this is what he says here. He says the major charge against Betsy DeVos was that she doesn't know enough about school to be Secretary of Education. She hasn't been a teacher, a principal, or superintendent. She doesn't know how to pick a curriculum, evaluate an instructor, or write an individual education plan for students with disabilities. That's been a big criticism of her. And Michael Petrilli in this article actually points out that all of that is true. Believe it or not, all that's true. It's actually a true criticism. He says all true. And if she were seeking employment as a teacher, a principal, or a superintendent, the experience gap would be damning. But then he continues on here. He says, but she's not. She's not going for a principal. She's not applying to be a principal of a school. She's not applying to be a superintendent of a school. She's not applying to be someone who writes curriculum. That is not what she is applying for. That is not why she was given this nomination and this job. He continues on here. He says President Trump selected her to be the U.S. Secretary of Education. That person's job is to do education, politics, and policy, not to run schools. He says to work with members of Congress and governors to understand how a bill becomes law, to provide moral support to reformers as they fight it out in the states and at the local level. With her decades of involvement in politics with policymakers and in the trenches of the parental choice movement, DeVos is an inspired choice for the job that the Senate confirmed her yesterday. He says, which isn't to say that millions of teachers and parents who flooded social media and the congressional switchboard to urge her rejection had nothing to worry about, but he thinks that the reason why she would be so good is because she would be a great proponent of the reforms that need to change in Washington dealing with education policy. So they were complaining that she wouldn't make a good principal or teacher, you've never been in a public school, and that's not why she was nominated. That's what I kept telling people a lot of time. A lot of people thought, well, she's an outsider. She's an outsider. And that's the point. We're in an age of outsiders. That's another thing, in the age of Obama and Trump, we care about qualifications all of a sudden. That's another thing that's kind of bugging me. But he says, he continues on here, he says, during her confirmation process, DeVos promised time and again to shrink Uncle Sam's impact on the nation's schools, to devolve decisions back to the states, communities, educators, and parents. That's in keeping with the mandate from Congress, which just over a year ago updated the major K-12 law to expressly limit the federal role in education. So if her job is to get big government and Washington and Uncle Sam out of the way of education, then she's perfect for that job. But that's not what they want. They, especially the teachers' unions and a lot of people entrenched in public schools, they don't want choice. They like public school, and they think more people should go to public school and be forced to public schools, and we just have to make those public schools better. But it's a systemic problem is why they're not getting better, and choice and competition is one of the best ways to get that better. Now, I'm someone, personally, who has the experience of both. I went to a private elementary school, a Christian elementary school, St. Luke's Lutheran School. It's right there in Oviedo. And then I went to a public middle and high school, and I also went to a public college. I almost went to a private college, but ended up going to UCF instead. So I've experienced of both. And, my public education wasn't bad. I was in a good area. I was in Seminole County. Seminole County is known, especially my area, for decent education. But I know of some areas in Central Florida that have not good education. So I'm not against public schools. But how can I be against being able to choose if you're one of these parents of kids in these inner city schools that are just failing and full of all these problems? How can I tell them that they should not be able to choose? And then when I hear about all these failing public schools, and then I hear about a solution like school choice, then how can I be against that? And if the public school does better, then fine. That's great. The competition will sometimes make this public school better. But I'm not going to be sad if a public school has to close or be defunded if it was a failing school to begin with. I have a lot more stats on this, a lot more take on this. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Dave and Oviedo, I will take your call right after the break. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your voice of reason, Michael Yaffee, and we will be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Orlando Smart Talk Radio. We're taking your calls on 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R, or send me a friend request on Facebook. Just search Michael Yaffee, or you can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. I have some interesting stats about money in schools that shows that maybe Betsy DeVos is going to be a really good education secretary. I have a feeling she's going to be a lot better than a lot of people think. Don't forget that Jeff Sessions was also confirmed. He will be a lot better than a lot of people think. So despite all the Democrats, all their hand-wringing, all their protests, all their hashtags, we got it done. And it's good to see that we didn't back down. All right, let's take a call here before I get more into this. Let's go to Dave in Oviedo. Dave, you have a take on this?
I do. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Love listening to you in the morning, too. But,
thanks.
Calling just to say that there's really two things. One is, real quick, is that I think that if they're going to take government funding, they need to take all students regardless of disability and provide services for them. The second piece is that with school choice, there should also be accountability for them. There needs to be some sort of measure of accountability, because my fear is within the public schools is that we give away the funding, and then they kick all the kids they don't want out that need all the additional help, and then the public schools suffer because they've lost funding for. Well,
they have, and it's interesting. The stats are showing that the money that's used for a lot of these vouchers is less than the amount per student they pay the amount per student in public schools.
No doubt. I understand that, and there's a step-up scholarships and all of that. And I'm in favor of school choice, and my kids go to a private school. But on the other side of that, I also see the need to educate the masses. And there are a lot of children who won't be able to go, and that private schools won't take because of behaviors or special needs. And so I worry for those public schools to not really have the funding that they need to provide for those children when private schools won't accept them, or if they struggle with behavior because they have poor parenting, then they are kicked out of the private school, and now they're going to be shuffled off to something even worse. And I think it could create a dichotomy.
See, the one thing I would address here, and this is kind of free market capitalism, how it works, is you don't think there would be certain private schools that would come up because, they want the money that would be specifically for special needs? There is a possibility with that. There is avant-garde in the Kissimmee area, but that's not the norm on a nationwide level. And if you were to look at that, I think you would find that's not a norm. In fact, there are lots and lots of private schools who, if
if you have any behavioral issue at all, you're done. You got to go. And, that's one of the reasons that some of us send our kids to private schools.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's kind of one of the reasons why. I mean, maybe that's good because that would encourage more discipline and encourage the parents for discipline as well. I mean, the thing I would like to address as well with this is, wouldn't this force those public schools to be better then because they would be competing for those dollars?
No, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying at all.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, and I agree with it, and it works in Europe, and that's actually the method that they use in England. And if a community school doesn't perform, then it closes down and new management takes over or whatever. And I'm not opposed to that.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that if you're going to take government funding, then you should take all students, and that you should service them the way public schools do, because otherwise you're creating a further gap between the classes, because the children who come from poor parenting and people who maybe don't understand education and value the education, or their parents work 3 jobs,
right.
Those children right there they're now not behaving, so they can't get the higher quality education, and now they're sent back to the public school that no longer has the funding they need to hire the additional support to work with those children. And that's really my point of it.
Interesting. All right, thank you for your call. I have to chew on that a little bit. I get what he's saying, but I don't necessarily want to force too much in the private schools either, because that just creates the problems that the public schools has. There's a reason why the private schools are better, is because they have certain standards, and I think a lot of those troubled kids could probably go to those private schools, have better discipline, and be able to do this a little bit better. Tom Mency, you look like you have something you want to say. You're like jumping at the bit there.
There's a certain fact going around that a lot of students with special needs or who are troubled kids already get shuffled around from school to school. They get in trouble in one school doesn't want them anymore, they send them somewhere else.
Even in public schools.
Right, exactly, in public schools. Yeah, so they're just shuttled around anyway. And there's some schools, I'm sure, that have more than their fair share of troubled students.
Interesting. All right, it's a very interesting angle to that. Let's take another call here. Let's go to Thomas in Orlando. Thomas, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good.
As far as the Betsy DeVos confirmation, my concern with Betsy DeVos was not that she was an outsider or even had her own thoughts about school choice. My concern was that she didn't know the answers to basic education questions.
Like what?
Like for example, we're talking about holding schools accountable, school choice, not knowing the difference between growth and proficiency.
I know everyone keeps using that example, and that's one example. No, not everybody knows that.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you have like a month and a half to prepare for your confirmation in front of our Congress, and you don't know that answer, and that lends itself back to school choice, as the guy was saying, holding schools accountable, making sure everybody's on the equal playing field. That's a big deal. How else do you measure school performance or student performance if you don't know that, which is the key indicator of student performance? And that's where I feel where that was my big thing. Whatever policies she wants to come up with or whatever, school choice might make this public school step up and perform better or put better programs in place and service the community a little better. But not knowing the basics of those type of things.
But that was like one thing.
But the thing is, like Mike, that would be like you going to produce the show you produce in the morning and not knowing anything about podcasting or not know anything about some big component to new talk radio in the U.S., which podcast is an important part or technology important part. Whatever the key issue is that you all deal with, producing shows and putting on radio shows in the U.S., not knowing anything about that. That's a really big deal where a lot of people might miss, but that's a huge, huge deal, in my opinion. I mean, that's where, and as far as school choice goes, I know she wants to push everything back to the state, but if, just as you are just talking just now with the last gentleman, there will have to be some kind of federal mandate to make sure that school choice wouldn't just do what the gentleman was just saying as far as accepting certain students, not accepting these students, and then you end up with kids getting pushed around or pop-up schools. I mean, there was a charter school right around the corner over here in Maitland where a guy ended up taking all the money. I mean, he was driving like a Porsche school. He made like $400,000 over the course of what the school was, and it shut down. It wasn't really servicing those kids.
Well, I mean,
So,
that's going to happen. I mean, that's kind of the whole point, is that there would be competition, and some would fail and some would succeed. And I think obviously there has to be common sense in administrating all this.
But as of right now, in some states right now, there is no really, really good oversight. So you could get a situation where when kids go to a school, they would get that per pupil payment.
But there's oversight in everything. Even in private schools right now, there's oversight. Like even without school choice, there's oversight on education. Even homeschool, there's oversight, isn't there?
Yeah, oversight on that point. But look up Summit Charter School, and then you know what I'm saying? I mean, just so you get a little background of, as far as where the loophole could be. You just don't want kids to be and parents to be put out that way, or when schools open up and they shut down abruptly due to funding. You don't want parents and kids to be put out with those school choice. So there'll have to be some kind of federal mandate to make sure that the rights of those parents and those children are watched out for, or as watched out for, they change these schools and move on from there. But I'm all for school choice. Let's go for it. It'll help our kids out better as long as there are some things in place to make sure schools are held to the same standards that public schools are held to. All
right. Thank you for your call. Interesting. People are bringing up a lot of side issues, which are fine, and I think those things should be debated, but they all seem to be for the main issue, which is they even admit, hey, I'm all for school choice, let's do it, but there's going to be these side issues, and I agree, those are things that will have to be addressed and added, but I don't know. I saw that whole part of proficiency and growth as this one little thing, and part of that whole confirmation that they pounced on, that she didn't know that one thing, and they said, well, if you don't know that, you can't do this. And I still think it goes back to my thing that she's not there to know that. She's there to put forth political policy and has fought for school. She's not there to be an administrator for schools, but that's just my opinion. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
So one thing I've noticed that just kind of came to my mind during the break of this whole argument with school choice, and one of the downfalls of it they're saying is that it could leave some people behind, some people with disabilities or some people with behavior problems. And I thought about this, and that's the same argument I usually hear about health insurance. Another issue where we have to have government step in and provide for some people with health insurance is usually that same argument, because they're so afraid that some people are going to be left behind. And I'm just always wary of that argument because, it's not really what happens. If you allow, the free market to work in these kinds of situations, or freedom or choices to work, more people usually do not get left behind. And there's a lot more people getting left behind now with just monopolized public schools. So I thought that wasn't. Now, the other thing, and then we just had someone comment on the Facebook that's how it is now. People are getting left behind. Exactly. So the other thing that Betsy DeVos said during her confirmation hearing that got a lot of controversy, a lot of criticism, and a lot of flack was this comment about guns in schools.
One final question. Do you think that guns have any place in or around schools?
I think that's best left to locales and states to decide. If the underlying question is...
You can't say definitively today that guns shouldn't be in schools?
Well, I will refer back to Senator Enzi and the school that he was talking about in Wapiti, Wyoming. I think probably I would imagine that there's probably a gun in the school to protect from potential grizzlies.
If President Trump moves forward with his plan to ban gun-free school zones, will you support that proposal?
I will support what the president-elect does, but Senator, if the question is around gun violence and the results of that, please know that my heart bleeds and is broken for those families that have lost any individual due to gun violence.
I look forward to working with you, but I also look forward to you coming to Connecticut and talking about the role of guns in schools.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I addressed. First off, the big thing was, guns to protect grizzlies. How ignorant is that? How could she say that? How ignorant? Well, actually, she was referring to a situation where a school had to deal with a grizzly, and she was just assuming maybe they would have to have a gun to prevent the grizzly. She doesn't know for sure. She didn't say it was a definite thing. She didn't say all schools would need it for that reason, but they harped on that. And maybe it wasn't the best example to use, I'm saying, in that argument, but I think her point is kind of valid in that different localities have different, reasons. If you live in a rural area where there's not a lot of people in the school and it's in a very rural area, you might not, if someone comes on with a gun, you might not have cops around to be able to come and help you for minutes, for 20 minutes or something. So they should be able to protect themselves. And the other thing about this, the whole question of, do you think guns should be in school? It's a very general question. Do you think guns can be in school? Well, I mean, do we think the kids should have guns? Of course not. No, nobody's saying the kids should have guns. So is that what you're asking? And you say, well, should guns be in school? In a lot of schools there are guns, believe it or not, right now, today. Because a lot of schools, my high school, had a police officer on campus, a resource officer, they called him, on campus. He had a gun. He was a cop. He had a gun. It was on school. Are we against that? Are we against the cop on school having a gun? So it was a setup question is what it was. And it was from the senator in Connecticut because it was Newtown. Oh, I like to come to Connecticut and talk about guns in schools in Newtown. Well, I mean, it's not like he took a gun that was already in school. He brought the gun with him. He was outside of school, brought it and killed a bunch of people as sitting ducks because there was nobody in the school who could fight back. So it's just a false argument. It was, it really bothered me the way it was a trap situation. And it's this general, you want guns in schools? And it's like, well, it's not that simple. And do I want the kids to be able to have guns? Of course not. Nobody wants that. But do I want maybe a trained teacher to be able to protect the kids in a situation like that who has a license, who is trained to use it? Why not? Or do I want a security guard who has a gun? Sure, if they can protect the kids. So is this a stupid argument? All right, I have one more call on this. Let's take a call from Pete in Maitland. Pete, how are you, my friend?
Hey, how you doing, Yaffee?
Pretty good.
Good. Listen to you on Facebook Live. Doing it right, man. Love
it. Thanks. I know who you are. I see you all the time.
Right. So listen. My whole thing with that guns in school, I was pretty much, baffled why she didn't say, of course we should have guns in school. Of course, the people, that are running the schools and the resource officers and all the adults there, should be able to carry guns in school. It's the students that obviously shouldn't have guns in school.
Right, and that's a common sense thing. But the way they phrased the question, it was just like, guns in school.
She could have pointed that out. She could have been a little bit more, just forthcoming on saying, there should be guns in school by the right people. Now, of course, you have guns there at school to protect the kids, and instantly, if there's a bad guy there, there's going to be instant action. You're not waiting for the cops to, show up 5-10 minutes later after, whoever's taken out, 3 or 4 kids. So, all right. So that being said, I have 2 kids. Okay. I have one child that has been in a charter school when he was younger, and now he's kind of like in a homeschool / sort of, it's like a partial school, if you will. Okay. So I'm totally for, I'm totally for school choice. One of my other sons, who's been in regular school his whole time, he's a normal child. My older one, who's been in the charter school, has a learning disability, a little bit, almost like dyslexia. It's a little bit different than that, but he needs more time in school. So the schools that he was in, regular schools that he was in wasn't really serving him well, right? So we were able to put him in a charter school. At first I had to pay for it because it was sort of a private school, and then it turned into a charter school. That's why I'm such a proponent of charter schools. Every child is different. Every person's different. And
it's an interesting point you're raising, too, because we had a caller before afraid that some kids with disabilities would be left behind if there were charter schools. But you're actually saying they're being left behind now, And charter schools help those kids more.
Exactly, because you can pick and choose. You can find a school that suits your child and his learning disability the way that you see that. You can tell if the school's going to fit your child, because you're looking for, okay, well that school's not going to work because they have 30 kids in there and they're not geared for my child that needs this. That's what we did. We searched all over, Winter Garden in Orlando for, the school that would fit my son.
Right.
So I'm definitely for that. But I can also understand, I own a small pool company. I have the ability to drive my son to his school. So, I don't know to say about what the parents do now that they have, or they're trying to look for a place for their kids, but now they have to figure out how to get their son or daughter to school.
But at least they would have the choice, I guess.
They would, and I'm all for that. And obviously, it's how bad do you need it, and if you can make it work. I don't know. There's no good answer on it, but I am glad that she's there because we've done it so long. The way that it's been done all these damn years, and I'm glad that somebody else is in there to push it in another direction. Let's see how this goes in this direction. And of course, there's going to be bumps, there's going to be bruises, but I think it's a good direction, and I'm glad that he put her in there, even though she could have answered questions better. Okay, I'll give that to you, but
awesome.
I'm still glad that she's in there.
All right, Pete, thank you so much for your call. I'm sure I'll see you on Facebook. Again, by the way, you can send me a friend request on Facebook. Just search Michael Yaffee and send me a friend request on Facebook. Wow, this hour's going by fast. One more segment to go. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You know what's beyond reason? Yaffee is now on YouTube. Go to YouTube now and just search Beyond Reason Radio. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Well, I had a plan, and this is why radio is actually a lot of fun, because plans go out the window and you kind of go with the flow. But I had a plan to go over a lot of the debate last night between Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders over Obamacare. CNN had a debate between the two of them, which I actually really like that CNN did that. I actually think I would have preferred to have seen Rand Paul versus Bernie Sanders. I think that would be a really interesting debate on a number of issues, even more than Obamacare. But I like Ted Cruz was there, and I think it's an important issue. I feel like we didn't get enough of that kind of thing during the presidential election. If you love Trump, it's fine, but Trump was not a big and getting deep into policies. Outside of maybe trade, he wasn't big on these kind of style debates, but these are things that have to be discussed, have to be talked about, and it doesn't end with the election. They still have to be discussed and talked about. So CNN, they're grabbing on something that they know will get ratings, so it's smart, television-wise, but they're also doing something that I think is actually really good and important, and it's a really good debate that we need to be having. So I had a plan to go over a bunch of stuff that was said by both sides and really get into it, but we're just out of time. I mean, we just won't have enough time to do that. But there was one comment that both me and producer Tom Benson liked. By the way, this is Michael Yaffee, Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're doing this show until 10 p.m. I've been on since 9. If you've missed any of the show, download the podcast at beyondreasonradio.com or download the Beyond Reason Radio app, and the podcast will be up there. It will also be on iHeartRadio. Just search Beyond Reason Radio on iHeartRadio. I just got a Facebook comment that said Ted Cruz crushed Bernie in that debate. That seems to be the consensus. It seems that Ted Cruz was really prepared in that debate. But there was one comment, and it kind of goes beyond healthcare, that both Tom Benson and I really liked from Ted Cruz in that debate. And here it was.
Bernie talks about how Washington is corrupt, how both parties are corrupt, how both parties are in bed with big business and big money, and it is a corrupt system benefiting the special interest. I agree absolutely and entirely. And what I tell folks is where I disagree is in a solution. If the problem is government is corrupt, why on earth would you want more power in Washington? I want to take power out of Washington and empower the people. When it comes to taxes, what I want to see is a simple flat tax of 10% for everyone and abolish the IRS. That ends the power of the lobbyists. It ends the power of Washington. That's a solution that empowers the people.
And, this actually really, and I couldn't agree more, and that is the one thing I've never really understood about leftists and especially socialists like Bernie Sanders is they often complain about the corruption in politics, about big money in politics, about, all that stuff, yet their solution is more government.
That's because I'm the new marshal in town and I can clean up Washington, D.C.
Yeah, exactly.
Baloney.
Yeah, and that's exactly the mindset. Is that, well, it failed in the past, but, in the future, it'll be better. And, I think Ted Cruz actually admitted that. He was talking on the same points in another comment. Actually, could you play cut 2 for me from Ted Cruz on there? I think he actually made another good point that kind of goes along the same lines of government being in charge of this stuff versus the free market and how it's worked and hasn't worked. Here it is.
Bernie likes talking about a public option. That's another way of saying government control of your health care. It's socialized medicine, and what does it mean? Every country where it's been applied, you've seen rationing, you've seen government deciding, especially seniors. Seniors, you don't get the health care you need. Now, Bernie mentions Canada quite a bit. I know quite a bit about Canadian health care. I was born there. Bernie, that may be the best argument against your position is look what it produced.
Look at the results. Yeah, that's right.
But, people vote with their feet. In 2014, over 52,000 Canadians left Canada to get health care in the United States and other countries. I'm reminded of a comment Ronald Reagan used to say about East Berlin, about the Berlin Wall. He said, the funny thing the leftists never seem to notice, the machine guns all point one direction. Everyone was fleeing communism and coming to freedom. If you look at socialized medicine, people leave their tens and hundreds of thousands every year, leave socialized medicine countries because they want to get a hip replacement, a knee replacement. The governor of one of the Canadian provinces came to America to get heart surgery, and he was a governor in Canada. And by the way, in your home state of Vermont, your hospitals advertise with Canadian flags, come to American hospitals, you'll get better health care. I don't want to mess up our health care. I want patients, all of us, to be in charge of our health care, not government deciding what health care we get.
I thought that was a great comment, and it goes on the same line and the same thinking. You look all over the world, they have more government, and yet people come here to escape that government. And the other thing I always like, to think about too is just how we assume that government hasn't been involved in healthcare for years anyway. They have been. I mean, way before we started having any of these problems, and government's been involved. So I thought Ted Cruz crushed him in that debate. But I have to say this. I like that they were able to do the debate civilly. We can actually have civil debates and actually laugh and enjoy each other, even though we totally disagree. I think people forgot that was actually possible after the presidential election. So it was actually encouraging to see that as well. Well, it's been a fast hour. If you miss any of the show, make sure to check the podcast at beyondreasonradio.com. I'll post it on my social media, so send me a friend request on Facebook. And, I should be back on later this week. Not sure what day, but if you're on my social media, I will tell you. And, I'll catch you guys next time.